Okay, so the term railway applies rather loosely to the topic of this week's video, but it has rails, therefore I'm counting it. In Devon, England is probably one of the most unusual railways ever built, not for its cargo or what ran on it, it's what the railways were made of. George Templar was born into fame. His father was a famous canal builder and his grandfather sat for Cornwall as a member of Parliament. Even before he could walk, his estate was over 1,800 acres and he inherited it all when his father passed in 1813. George had no interest in the estate and much preferred to spend his time hunting, writing poetry and socialising, and left the running of the estate to his lawyer. Templar loved to show off and loved entertaining the social elite. But his flamboyant lifestyle was beginning to catch up on him, and he soon noticed that the money was dwindling. Granite was in much needed supply. Monuments and buildings demanded the valued stone, and one of the best stone for building was found at the nearby valley of Haytor Down. Haytor Quarry was opened in 1820, and with good reason. London Bridge was one of the largest supplier contracts Templar had won. The granite near to his estate was perfect. The granite had been used before in Stove Manor House and the local church, but Templar was not prepared for something this big. Because of the tough terrain, getting the granite to the port of Tynemouth was no easy task. Templar had the use of the canal his father had built, but the canal was still a good 8 miles away from the quarry. Roads were impractical and expensive. So, inspired by the miners of the old mines, Templar decided to use the only suitable source of transport, rail. There was only one glaring problem with this idea. In the Haytor area, iron was not easy to come by. Templar could import the rails, but in Templar's mind, why would he do that when a cheaper, more sustainable material was easily available? So in a move which would make many question, he proceeded to make the rails of granite. The granite rails were shaped in an L shape to guide the large horse-drawn wagons, and the wagons would easily turn if needed. To help steady the wagons, the horses, up to 18 at a time, could be tethered to the front or the back of the train to act either as the driving force or as the brake. The tramway opened in 1820. I was able to shift several tons of granite a day to London and the surrounding areas. But the commission did not save Templar's financial situation, and in 1830s he was forced to sell the tramway and the canal to Edward St Maur, who was the Duke of Somerset. The quarry continued for many years and employed around 100 men who would mine and split the stone using a method called plug and feather. A line of holes were cut into the surface and then 2 shims were put into the hole. A wedge-shaped plug was forced between the shims as the plug was driven down, and the shims directed the force across the stone. As more plugs were driven into the hole, the constant force split the stone into 2. The granite trade was sporadic at best, and for a time the quarry was considered to be one of the best in the area. However, quarries in Cornwall were opening, and competition from these was fierce. In 1858, unable to compete with the cheaper cost of transportation and the raw materials, the quarry was abandoned. Despite the scars that the quarry caused, nature had reclaimed the quarry once again. It's now a natural pool and a regular hotspot for local wildlife. Apart from the odd rusted machine, the only evidence of the quarry's industrial past was the tramway itself. The railway still sits in its abandoned state over 200 years after it was opened. It has become part of the Templar Way, an 8-mile walk where you can walk the route of the railway, just as those did in the 1820s. As for Templar, after the sale he moved away where he managed to make enough money to build a house, but in 1843 George Templar's life was cut short after he suffered a hunting accident and died later that day. The tramway serves as more of an unusual part of railway history. It's a lovely walk, and if you visit Devon, it's definitely worth visiting. If you can't visit the UK but want to check out the granite that was quarried, then head over to Arizona. That's where the London Bridge, created in the 1800s, was taken and rebuilt. But for now, the National Gallery and the British Museum in London, as well as many other buildings and monuments, have a lot to thank the tramway for. It's weird and wonderful, and we're lucky in many ways it's preserved for generations, thanks to a million-old material that it's made of.